welcome to Expeditions into Spirit. I'm your host, Val Jon Farris. In this episode, I want to share with you a profound UFO encounter I had in Mexico while I was on expedition. This happened 6 years ago in a remote region that's known as a huge hotspot for unidentified objects, or UAPs as they now call them. So this happened in a very remote region in the high mountains, and it was an otherworldly experience for me, and it was life-changing. And even though I've had a lot of otherworldly experiences over my years as a guide into Central and South America to the ruins, this one was probably the most memorable. So let me give you a little background before I share the encounter with you. So I've been an expedition guide since 1998, where I was in Mexico City at the time doing a leadership development program with Hewlett-Packard Company. I was a high-level Fortune 50 consultant who traveled the world, and so I got a free ticket to be able to go to these remarkable places around the world. So there, after I finished my program there, I was invited to go to Peru for this very special event called the Light of the Masters, which was it's only known by the locals, and it's a very extraordinary time, I guess you could say, where there are otherworldly phenomena that happen. So I went, and I had one of the most profound experiences of my life. I climbed to the top of Huayna Picchu, which is behind Machu Picchu, and spent the night under the full moon. I wrote a book called Inca Fire, Light of the Masters, and which recounts my experience. So I won't go into the detail on that now, but it was the beginning of what inspired me about Mesoamerica and the philosophy that they had about cosmology, astronomy, the universe, and something very specific about interstellar consciousness that I'll describe as we move forward through this episode. So 6 years ago, I was in the midst of a series of expeditions. I had just finished visiting Tula, which is outside of Mexico City, where the Atlantean giants, I don't know if you know about the 4 15-foot basalt otherworldly sentries that stand there at that ancient site, but I just finished doing an expedition there, and two of my local friends, some indigenous friends, invited me to another place in Mexico that was this hotspot for UFOs. So, I couldn't resist the invitation. I have a lifelong fascination with the otherworldly, with UFOs. In fact, I've had my own encounters, not close-up encounters like the one I'm going to share with you, but at the young age of 8, my father and I would go on camping trips to Eastern Oregon, and we'd sleep out under the stars during the summer months, and we played this game called Who Could Spot the Most Number of UFOs. So, in any one night, and this was before there were many satellites in low Earth orbit, so, in any one night, we would count a dozen or more anomalous objects that would zoom across the heavens. Now, these weren't close up, but nonetheless, they were extraordinary because these things would not just travel in a straight line. They would zigzag, they'd make U-turns, 90-degree turns, they'd disappear and reappear in one part of the sky and appear in another part. They'd blink sometimes, and more times than not, I always got a feeling that they knew we were watching them. And I would occasionally have a slight ringing in my ears that I didn't know what it was about at the time, and I didn't correlate it to UFOs. But later in life, I realized that it's kind of a homing signal or like a subtle tap on my shoulder to pay attention to something. And that's a whole nother story, and I'll share where that high frequency tone in my head has taken me around the world. So 6 years ago, when my friends asked me if I wanted to go to this UFO hotspot, I couldn't resist. So, I went with them, and we traveled to this remote location. And, upon arrival, we set up camp and set up a video camera with a telephoto lens, because these craft were known to appear across an adjacent mountain. And they'd show up only after dark, like in the middle of the night. So my friends told me that probably anywhere between 2 a.m. and 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning would be the best time to make contact. So true to form, at around 3 o'clock in the morning, after we had all the equipment set up, we actually made visual contact with this UFO. So we watched in amazement as this saucer-shaped craft materialized out of thin air across the ravine on an adjacent mountainside. And it was probably 20 meters in diameter. It was circular in shape, and it had intense white lights cycling around its perimeter. And we tracked its movements for probably more than an hour as it hovered above the inclined terrain. And occasionally the craft would vanish, just like it did when I was a boy. It would vanish in one spot and then it would reappear in another. And there was no visible means of propulsion, and it was completely silent. I wanted to know if this thing was contactable. Perhaps a telepathic connection with its occupants could happen. So I invited my two companions to join me in an experiment. And we focused our attention on this object, and within a few seconds, its exterior lights began pulsating in perfect synchronicity with my heartbeat and with my breathing. It was as if it were alive and conscious and capable of monitoring my physiology, my stream of consciousness. And I don't know what my friends were experiencing, but for me, time stopped, and what happened next has remained with me since my first moment of contact. I want to describe to you what the feeling was like in my body when this encounter began. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of swimming in deep waters where you look down between your feet and kind of fades to black and you get this queasy feeling in your stomach. Well, that's what it was like. It was extremely overwhelming. Also very familiar, though, in a strange kind of way. And it lasted only a few minutes, but I couldn't tell that it was just a few minutes. It felt like an eternity during that short period of time. There were no words, there were no visuals exchanged. It was completely silent, but very powerful in terms of the resonating or the kind of energy that I felt inside of my body. And unlike experiencers who often report a sense of affection or maternal love, this experience wasn't like that. It's not that these beings were austere or arrogant or uncaring. What I felt was, I guess you could call it an objective benevolence, a mature sense of belonging and relatedness, as if they were distant family members to me. Or maybe even a better way of explaining it is that they were overseers of my evolutionary development. That's probably the best way I can put it. I'm not going to complain about the overwhelm, though, because it was truly fulfilling for me. It was inspiring. And I could tell they were aware of me. I'm not going to say that it was a telepathic experience, but they were acutely aware of me and of my reaching out to them. I don't know if they were aware of my friends because honestly, they weren't even in my reality as I was having this experience. But they demonstrated to me a vastness in consciousness, an intelligence that I can't even begin to describe, not of this earth. I guess the best way for me to put it would be that it was an interstellar kind of capacity that their consciousness represented to me, a magnitude that I can't even begin to measure or put on any kind of a scale. In those few timeless moments, I experienced the lifting of a veil, an opening deep within my psyche that allowed for long forgotten remembrances to resurface inside of me. These weren't normal memories, but more like waves of universal knowledge originating from somewhere beyond my normal faculty of recollection. They moved deep within me like ocean currents, a flurry of insights that entered my field of awareness. I didn't really understand them or grasp them as they were occurring, but I later deciphered that they had to do with the nature of existence. They had to do with the origins of consciousness, not just for me or humanity, but consciousness that exists in the universe. And also, what stood out most was there was this feeling and a sense of knowingness that they had a grasp of the underlying architecture of the cosmos, maybe all the way down to a quantum level. And while the details of the downloads happened so fast in this timeless kind of way, since my encounter 6 years ago, they've resurfaced and clarified inside of me. I've experienced snippets of them and clarifications of them in dreamtime sequences, in moments of silence or meditation, or even when I'm just engaging in my normal day, I'd get these downloads where I'd have to stop and, I'd write them down or try to document them in the best way that I could because they were fleeting. They'd go by really fast. But also, there were times when I'd go into my inner space and locate that place where the veil of forgetfulness lifted for me. And I'm not quite sure if you've ever had the experience that deep inside of you, in your core, in your center, there's a place that is familiar, that calls to you, or you can feel a kind of a gravitational pull towards. And when you go there, it's like a familiar altar inside. And that's the place that I found that these insights that were downloaded into me resided, and where they kind of cultivated and where they would manifest, and I could access them. So specifically, what I've realized during the years since that encounter is who these beings are, at least this particular group of beings. I can't say that all beings are like this. And again, this is just my experience. I'm not telling you that this is the truth. I don't think you should believe this necessarily as fact. But to me, the occupants of this craft that I witnessed, let me know why they're here on the earth, what their role is here, and what it's been since they've been here, and what role they play in humanity's evolutionary development. I know those are some pretty big claims, but honestly, I can only recount to you how it showed up for me and how it's resonated inside of me. And I think those, I've experienced that there's kind of two different kinds of people, or two different styles that people have. One is people who just live their lives and they do the best they can, and they take what they get, and they don't spend much time processing. And then there's another group of people who are what I call self-reflective, where they reflect on the life that they're living. So I guess what I'm sharing here is for those of you who are that second grouping of people who have an element of self-reflection, and you know yourself inside well enough to be able to relate to what I'm talking to you about. So before I list my realizations, as it were, I again want to reiterate that what I'm about to tell you is, I don't think it's the truth. I don't think it's gospel. I don't think I have the answers. I think there's a lot of different ways that people can experience the unknown or the otherworldly. And all I can do is convey my perceptions as they arose within me, and to do so with as much authenticity as I can muster. Ultimately, each of us has to kind of come to our own understandings about such things. So I'm going to go ahead and share the key points that have arisen and clarified within me. So the first part of the download that came to me was that these beings are dimensional in nature and not physical. And what I mean by that is that they are somehow able to transition between dimensions of reality that defy our known laws of physics. And I'm not sure that all non-human intelligence have this capability, but the ones that I encountered and had an exchange with are definitely able to transition between the dimensions of time and space and matter and even energy. And so how I interpret that information that I got from them was that they're able to master energy and space in such a way that they can materialize wherever they want. It doesn't mean they don't have physical bodies or places where they live or exist, but that somehow they're able to make these transitions between our laws of physics. So they're not bound by time and space the way we are. And the way that I interpret it is that in order for us to be able to understand the nature of these beings, we would have to let go of kind of an anthropomorphic way that we view life and science and the universe. Transcending our conclusions of seeing everything in terms of our own human biological evolutionary processes. You would have to transcend, for example, the conclusion of the Big Bang being the beginning of the universe, and move beyond that, like a birth of a child, that maybe the universe does not comply to human biological cycles and processes. In fact, what I was left with and what's gotten clear for me over the years is that these beings, at least the ones that I made contact with, like the universe, are infinite in nature and do not play by the finite rules. The second main download that I received was that these beings inherited or inhabited this planet prior to stabilizing its orbit around the sun and its orbit around its axis. Now, I know that's a little abstract, but my understanding of it is that they were responsible for stabilizing the Earth's rotation around its central star. And I'm not sure if they came when the Earth was being formed, whether they formed the Earth, or maybe whether they came later and placed the moon around the Earth to be able to create the tides and the stabilities that we have enjoyed on this planet with having a lunar stabilization force like that. But nonetheless, the way that I interpreted it was it's kind of a cosmic characterization. So rather than them saying how many years they've been here, the way it was couched to me or presented to me was in a more cosmological orientation of time, which kind of pointed to me about their advanced understanding of planetary development technologies, if you like, and a mastery over the mechanics of physics, of energy and matter, capabilities far beyond what we're able to conceive of or even imagine, I believe. So the third insight that I received was that there are also, and this may sound strange, but it's nonetheless how it came to me, was that they are responsible not only for the stabilization of this planet around within its solar system movements, but that they're responsible also for cultivating all life on this planet, including us. And although that was initially kind of an intimidating insight for me, I don't necessarily cherish the idea of having been created in a test tube or having my DNA fiddled with by aliens. But nonetheless, this is how it was conveyed to me, was that in some way they are responsible for either assisting in our evolutionary development or actually seeding it to begin with. Now, along with that intimidating insight, I also received from them a comforting kind of message, which was that these beings are not to be worshipped or considered to be gods. In fact, I don't even want to be viewed that way. In fact, what was conveyed to me was that they also honor a higher source, much like we have a reverence for and worship God or honor spirit. They also honor a higher source that generated them. So that was really comforting for me to have a sense of, because there's so much misinformation about them being gods or being the sources of creation and all those things. I don't know about that, but I can tell you that what was conveyed to me was a sense of humility, a sense of commonality, a sense of reverence for, and definitely not a sense of entitlement or of being the end-all and be-all creators of the universe, if you like. So one of the final revelations, I guess you could say, that was imparted to me, and I'm still kind of deciphering it and piecing it together, is that they're stewards of peace. In other words, they're not just benevolent, but they are interested in peace. Now, I don't know if they're interested in peace for us, or if they're interested in having a peaceful home world where they can continue their operations, because they are definitely here. There are bases under the water, inside of mountains, and in other locations, maybe in high Earth orbit. But nonetheless, what was conveyed to me was that they're tolerant of our violent behaviors, but they have peaceful intentions. Now, I'm not so sure that they want us to become peaceful or raise our level of awareness or whatever, but they definitely have an interest in protecting the peace and nurturance on this planet. So, it's no secret that non-human intelligence have been monitoring our worldwide nuclear arsenals and weapons of mass destruction for decades. So they certainly have the capability to be able to intervene if they want to. They can do that at any time. They haven't done it yet, which is what kind of tells me that they're not violent or don't have clandestine intentions to invade us. I do think that they, at least at this point, are interested in cohabitating, maybe keeping their distance for certain reasons. But also, I think having an intention to maybe slowly have us be able to realize that they are here and that they've been here for a long time. Now, I'm not sure which would be worse, for them to be the monitors of our well-being and be able to block us from being able to use our nuclear arsenals, and maybe save us at the last minute from pushing the buttons of mass destruction. I don't know if that would be worse or whether it would be worse for them to just instill interstellar martial law and dictate to us that we wouldn't be doing such things before we'd ever consider pushing the button. So I don't know. Those are a couple of interesting options, if you like. Okay, so those were the main downloads I received and that I've been integrating over this 6-year period of time. A lot of it I kind of had an intuitive sense about already, so it was more like a validation for me. Nonetheless, I think these insights are very relevant, very important, and something that we really need to be taking into consideration. And, there's so much information on the internet now, podcasts and interviews and disclosure segments that debate whether or not non-human intelligence exists or not, where they're from, what their intentions are they interdimensional, extra-dimensional, are they from the future, from the past, from distant galaxies. I think what's more relevant for me is what do they represent in terms of our development, and what kind of challenges do we need to engage in terms of elevating or maturing our level of consciousness to be able to not only accept that they exist and that they're here, but to be able to interact with them and maybe in the future even coexist with them. So that to me seems to be what is missing in a lot of the interviews that are happening and information that's going on about NHI and UAP and UFOs, is this issue of what about consciousness do we need to understand and expand? And I think that's really what the main point ought to be here, or at least it's the main point that I want to focus on in the interviews that I'm doing and are going to continue to be doing. So throughout my expeditions to the ancient ruins over the years, I've felt the presence of NHI. I've witnessed their architectural brilliance. I've learned about their visitations from my indigenous friends, the elders that I've made wonderful relationships with, and the shamans that I know. And as I've stated, everyone I've engaged with across Mesoamerica refers to beings from the heavens, or what they call sky beings, who are instrumental in teaching their ancestors about the advanced principles of architecture and construction, food production and water management, the development of tools and measurement systems, advanced mathematics. I mean, the Maya particularly, they invented the placeholder of 0 1,000 years before Europe even conceived of the idea. And also, I think probably more than anything is the ancients' cosmological knowledge and their use of that knowledge to expand the horizons of human consciousness. So mainstream archaeologists and academic institutions adamantly deny any involvement in non-human intelligence in any of these activities, and they maintain that that all of these monolithic sites around the world are nothing more than inventive and creative ways that Stone Age people were able to use stone hammers and copper chisels to be able to create these masterpieces. There's another area of censorship that I'd like to bring up, which is the withholding of ancient codices, cosmological knowledge that the ancients held, and not just the Mayans or the Toltecs or Aztecs or Inca, but ancient civilizations from around the world. But, because my area focuses on Mesoamerica, particularly the Mayan Zolkin calendar is one example. That is a fabulous philosophical, spiritual architecture that was devised from what I've been told by the elders is that it was imparted to the ancients by these sky beings as spiritual guidance and kind of like a roadmap for how to elevate human consciousness and to attain levels of awareness that would take us out of our survival instincts and place us into a more peaceful, collaborative, and inclusive way of being. There's also many ancient scrolls and inscriptions that have been suppressed and kept from the general public. Another Mayan example is the Popol Vuh, and many others like the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi Library, the Book of Enoch, and many others from around the world. Yet for all of the misinformation, the lies, and the concealments of the truth being disseminated today, there's a growing movement of people who refuse to be misguided and who hold fast to their inner knowingness about not being alone in the universe. Okay, so those of us who are willing to lift the veil of forgetfulness will rediscover the terrain of the interstellar and take our rightful and humble place within the vast community of life forms who know themselves to be expressions of the infinite and finite form. I want to thank you so much for spending the time with me and for listening to this extraordinary experience. I'm looking forward to sharing more with you on my YouTube channel, Expeditions into Spirit, and for seeing you sometime in the future at events and programs, because I'm definitely interested in moving the ball forward, not only with disclosure, but with being able to engage in the practices and principles and disciplines that are necessary for us to be able to expand our consciousness into what I call an interstellar kind of capacity, to be able to not only keep up with these non-human intelligent beings, but be able to relate with them in a way that we can contribute to them and they can contribute to us. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.